So 3 minutes and 10 seconds the advantage for these four riders. They did have upwards of 4 minutes, and it's come down quite a bit recently. Rubiano Chavez of Androni Giocattoli Venezuela, Gert Dox of Lotto Belisol, Maxime Belkov, already a stage winner in this year's Giro d'Italia for Katusha, and Luke Durbridge of Orica Green Edge, the Australian National Road Race champion, just 22 years of age in his first Grand Tour. Rubiano won a stage of last year's Giro, soloed in ahead of Adriano Malori. Second year with Androni. He's been in Italy since 2006 on various teams, so well accustomed to the culture. Is he accustomed to the weather? Well, so far it's been nice today. The sun beat down on them throughout yesterday's stage, will have been a great relief to them. And these riders, their advantage has stepped up ever so slightly again, so they've started to open up a little bit, and saw an unusual flurry of activity just before the last commercial break from the Orica Green Edge team. Couple of attacks coming left and right, much to the confusion and irritation of Omega Pharma Quickstep and Argus, that are controlling things back there for Mark Cavendish and Luka Mezgec respectively. The expectation is that we're looking towards a sprint today. There's one classified climb on the route, the fourth category ascent to Crosara, 5.3 kilometers in length, and it starts with about 11.4 kilometers to go, finishes with 8 kilometers with a little bit longer than 8 to go. Goes to 16 kilometers from the top of that fourth category ascent, and then they descend for 8 kilometers, and then 8 odd kilometers of flat road to the finish. It's a little bit of a messy finish, I can tell you as well. There's lots of roundabouts and lots of bits and pieces of street furniture, narrow roads on the ascent as well, so it's a slightly complicated one. And I suppose, Sean Kelly, the big question is, can Mark Cavendish get over that hill? If he doesn't, can he get back on? And more importantly, how important is it for him to get the win today?
Well, it's important for him to get the win. When you look at the points classification, we've seen Mark Cavendish in the red jersey there, and he is leading that standing at the moment. You know, it is a very tight one, because Cat 11 is only at 6 points, and then Betancourt is only at 24. And a lot of the other riders who will mark points as we go further on in this race, it could be, you know, a real tight one. So he has to try and get maximum points today, because Cat 11s, Betancourt, they will certainly get points in the days to come in the mountain stages, and we can see Omega Pharma Quickstep are controlling the situation. The climb at the end of the race, it's a climb of 5 kilometers, and there is percentages in it where it's quite steep. Plus 1 point is a little bit for 12%, but mostly 8% is the climb. And if he gets over the climb, well, then for the sprint with a big group, he should, you know, have no problems, because when you look at the sprinters that are left, I don't think anybody is capable of beating the way Mark Cavendish is sprinting here in this Giro. But it's always worrying times for the climbers. Will I be able to get over? And that's what they're thinking at the moment, and that's what the team directors are thinking, that have sprinters in there. They will be saying, well, you know, hopefully they will be able to cling on in the bunch. A lot of tired riders in the peloton here, so they will be losing contact. When you get to the summit, as you say, 16 kilometers to go, the guys who have nothing left in the tank, they will just go up this climb very slowly and cruise in and lose 3, 5 minutes, 7 minutes. It doesn't bother them. But for the sprinters, they have to really try and cling on here and get over it. It looks like it is a climb where we should get the sprinters coming through, but depend on the race. If it's very aggressive in the beginning of the climb and they really go fast, well, then it will make it that bit difficult. But normally, if it's allowed to be controlled by the sprinters teams in the first 2-3 kilometers of the climb, then I would see the sprinters getting through.
Well, we're presented with the enchanting vision of Borghetto, with the fortified bridge of the Visconti at Villeggio sul Mincio. We're in Verona here, and it's just absolutely gorgeous. That late medieval Scagliero Castle. Presenting a number of towers. It's the Sigurta Villa with extensive gardens on the banks of the Mincio River. And it's A veritable ecological oasis with 18 ponds containing tropical fish in there. No, you're not allowed to drop your rod in. What a beautiful sight as the riders completely and utterly ignore it and make their way past on their way towards Vicenza today. Of course, they started in Caravaggio, hometown of the great Michelangelo Merisi, universally known as Caravaggio, one of the greatest of all Italian painters. And it's the first time that Caravaggio has played host to the Giro d'Italia. So now the bunch inside, 3 minutes behind and pushing hard. Little bits of news for you overnight. We've heard that the AG Tour Le Mondial team will definitely not be taking part in the Dauphiné Libéré, the Criterium du Dauphiné, which is a huge disappointment to them because, of course, their main sponsor is based in the region. And that's it's a voluntary withdrawal from that race because they're part of the movement for clean cycling. And of course, this comes in the wake of Sylvain Georges' positive dope test for an over-the-counter medication to help him with circulation in his legs, and that contained a banned substance, heptaminol. And Sylvain Georges, well, it means that his team won't be able to take part in one of the most important races of the year for them because the rules of the movement for clean cycling say, the charter that they've signed up to say that you can't take part in the next 8 days of World Tour racing. Vincent Lavenu, much to his disappointment and dejection, says that, well, there's nothing we can do about that. This is the rule, and it's not just a case of having to adhere to the rule that we signed up to. This is what we passionately believe in. We think it's important. So AG Tour Le Mondial are to be commended for that. At the moment, it looks as if they will be able to take part in the Tour of Switzerland. There's a little bit of confusion about what that rule actually means because the Dauphiné doesn't encompass all 8 days, and the very next World Tour event is the Tour of Switzerland, so you might think that they wouldn't be able to take part in that either because they've missed the first couple of days in it. But no, it appears that the rule is only really meant to count for one race, so at least they'll be able to switch their attentions to the Tour of Switzerland. Visconti, winner on the Galibier, one of 3 stages that the Movistar team have taken in this year's race. It really has been an extraordinary year for them at the Giro d'Italia. Visconti on the Galibier, and Schausty yesterday, and of course let's not forget Alex Dowsett's wonderful win in the time trial on stage 8 to Saltara, as Mark Cavendish looks quite relaxed at the moment and well to the fore. So all that talk about not really believing that he can do it, well, his team wouldn't be chasing like they are, and he wouldn't be sitting up at the front if he didn't have that kind of ambition at the end of today.
No, but I think you know, they're probably playing that a bit, saying that, you know, maybe it's a bit too difficult for Mark Cavendish, because if they say yes, we're going to go out and control tomorrow, well, then the teams will say okay, Omega Pharma Quickstep can control everything. So by doing that, you know, leave a little bit of doubt there. Some of the other teams will contribute a little bit as well, and we see on the front of the bunch that's what's happening at the moment, and they are controlling the breakaway pretty easily. And we did see there some moments ago where Ulrika Greenedge wanted, you know, to make the race a bit more difficult, try and get attacks going, but it didn't last for long because it's so difficult. Like, with 114 kilometers to go, there's not many riders want to go on the attack at this point. With a breakaway of just under 3 minutes out front, and we're back to the situation again where they're just keeping the lid on it, and we can see Argos as well are getting interested in it, and you know, they have somebody who can do well in the sprint, and it's all about you know, getting over the climb. That's what I think a lot of the teams, a lot of the sprinters are worried about, and but they're going to control the situation and try and at all costs get it down to a bunch sprint, a group sprint today.
Well, Argus certainly do have a good man for the gallops. Luka Mezgec is their big sprinter at the moment, with the departure of John Degenkolb, and we've got a sight of him at the back of the well, down at the team car, getting some attention to his radio. They certainly, of all their riders, want to make sure that his radio works well. As up front, Maxime Belkov gave us a nice slow-mo demonstration of how to collect a musette. And all the riders in the break have been through the feed zone now and have collected what food and drink they need. And we'll dispense of those bags to be grabbed by the roadside spectators. So AG2 are definitely out of the Dauphiné, so it's a big disappointment for them. A bunch of retirements to report, actually. We're up to 32 departures from this race. There were no less than 6 riders that failed to finish yesterday. We told you at the time about Taylor Phinney, who had to retire with saddle sores. Martin Winans as well of the Blanco team, we were aware of out on the road. Unfortunately, Nathan Haas crashed, the Garmin rider. No brakes, but plenty of damage to his left shoulder, elbow and his hand, and unfortunately he's had to retire within a few days of the finish of the race. Disappointment for him. Matthew Harley-Goss of Orica Green Edge, he's absolutely been on his knees for quite a bit of this race, really. Came in with lots of ambition to win a stage in the first week, but really wasn't able to be a factor in the middle week of this race in the couple of sprint opportunities. It's been up to Brett Lancaster to do the work for them. The bunch makes its way through the feed zone, and the advantage for the breakout front had shrunk to only just over 2.5 minutes, but now they've been through the feed zone. The bunch will slow a little as they go through, so it might be a little opportunity for them to step it up and bring it back out closer to 3 minutes. Other riders that failed to finish yesterday, Anthony Roux of Française de Jeux, they're down to 5 riders, so they're pretty decimated. Dmitry Kozanchuk of Katusha, and I told you about Taylor Phinney and Nathan Haas. Oh, the other rider, of course, that we've lost, and this was a bit of a talking point, was Mattia Gavazzi, the ace sprinter from Androni Giocattoli, has been thrown off the race for hanging on to the cars. And you know, it's something that Mark Cavendish has been very vocal in the last couple of days about the fact that he has 1 and sometimes 2 commissars following him around, and he just finds it irritating that, as far as he's concerned, he plays by the rules. And so it's interesting that the commissars have picked up on someone that was cheating. Quite simply, getting a lift from the cars is not allowed. It's okay to take a draft from the cars when you're working your way back up after a puncture or collecting food or something, you know, on a flat stage, but it's a different thing altogether if you're taking a lift and not actually pressing on the pedals going up the hill. So Gavazzi put his hand up. He said he made a mistake. It's his fault. He's devastated. Of course, he was born in Brescia, so it would have been a homecoming for him on Sunday, but he's not going to make it there as a competitor in this year's Giro d'Italia. And it's something that, Sean, you probably saw and certainly heard about in your career, and I think it happens a lot less now, doesn't it?
Yes, well, I think the commissars now, you know, they hear more about it. I think the riders are more outspoken as well, and we did hear Mark Cavendish saying that he had a commissar with him, or 2 commissars with him actually, on the climbs, and I suppose, you know, show the example that it's not only Mark Cavendish who've got a jersey, the sprinters jersey, let's call it, the points classification, other riders as well, you know, who are in difficulty on the climbs. They're not, you know, allowing anybody to get away with anything, and if you take the car, pull up of the car once, okay, a short one, but if you go for a second time, well, then you can be out of the race, and that is the case. And I think it's a good thing they're showing as well before we get to the mountain stages, because a lot of trial riders here, as we go to Friday, Saturdays, big mountain stages, I think everybody will be so careful now that they know if they overdo it by hanging from the car any little distance at all, they can be out of the race immediately.
Yep.
And one bit of information, Hayden Rolston also did not start this morning. Did not start or abandoned pretty quickly. I didn't hear but exactly what, but he's out of the race.
He stopped out on the road, so that's big disappointment as we get a replay of the
Give Me My Bag.
Well, questions coming in thick and fast about that, actually. Okay, well, we can talk a little bit about Musettes in a moment. In the meantime, let's hear from Vincenzo Nibali. Things are going well for him, leader of general classification and in control at the moment.
Ma io cerco di essere molto tranquillo e di gestire sempre la situazione.
I'll try to stay calm as much as I can.
Questo è anche dettato un po' dalla condizione.
And to manage the situation as best I can. It's never easy, but I'm feeling good, so we will see. It looks good too, in terms of how he's performing on the bike. And his faithful domestique Valerio Agnoli has done Trojan work for him throughout these 2.5 weeks of racing. And he'll pick up the Musette. And Spike Pitt is asking, at DQ Sport is the Twitter handle. Just been asked by my daughter, what happens if you grab the wrong bag of food, i.e. another team's? That doesn't really happen, does it? They can see their team helper, and the team helper, of course, is dressed in team gear, so it's relatively easy to pick them out. But I'm sure it might happen the odd time.
No, I don't think the team from another, a helper from another team would not give you the Musette. He would just, take it back very quickly. They have just the amount of Musettes for the riders, the number of riders in the race, and we did see there with the Astana team, some riders miss the Musettes as they go through, and then you can go back. When it's going at a pace, as the Peloton is going at the moment, it's easy to do. Go back to the car and take 2-3 Musettes, whatever it is, come back into the Peloton and give them over to the riders that missed them coming through the feed station.
So just under 3 minutes for these 4 riders up front as the Peloton makes its way. 110 kilometers to go. Okay, rejoin us again after these. Very welcome back to stage 17 of the Giro d'Italia as the riders make their way from Caravaggio to Vicenza. Total of 214 kilometers. They're at the halfway point of the stage. There are 4 riders clear. They've had a maximum advantage of about just over 4 minutes, and that's now holding steady at 3 minutes and 12 seconds. All the riders have been through the feed station, and the gap has re-established itself at just over 3 minutes. So it's a cat and mouse affair going on between the big bunch led by Amiga Pharma Quickstep and the Argus Shimano squad, and the 4 riders up front. Maxime Belkov of the Katusha team is up the road, not for the first time in this Giro by a long chalk, already a stage winner. Miguel Rubiano of the Androni Giocattoli squad is also in there. 49th overall. He's best placed of these riders, but fully 1 hour and 17 minutes down. Gert Dox is in the breakaway for Lotto Belisol, the Belgium rider, now 24 years of age. And the youngest rider in the group is Luke Durbridge, Orica Green Edge. And those 4 riders are riding steadily on the front as the bunch makes its way towards Vicenza. As I said, they have 1 climb to get over, 4th category ascent off Crosara. And the big question is, can Mark Cavendish and co make it up and over it and get back into the group in time for the finish? And that's likely to be the big imponderable, the big suspense moment. We did tell you just before the break that Hayden Ralston of Radio Shack has unfortunately had to retire from the race, bringing the number of retirements in this year's race up to 33. And we understand he has respiratory problems. Thanks to Cy O'Shea for that bit of information. .312 out front. Time to wish a happy birthday to Christian van der Velde, 37 years of age today. Pro since 1998. Currently not his, in terms of GC, it's not exactly his best performance, but he's doing great work for Garmin Sharp. It's been a tough race for them. Their motivation has been badly affected by the departure of the reigning champion rider Hejidal earlier in the race. Christian van der Velde still very much in there, 37 as I said. He wore pink in the 2008 Giro d'Italia for a day. And last year he won the Tour of Colorado, the USA Pro Cycling Challenge, so still a big force in short stage races. And Oscar Gatto, we just got a sight of him back at the car collecting food. I suppose if you miss your musette at the feed zone, there's still an opportunity, there's a second chance to get food after that.
Well, it's easy when it's going at the rate. We see the Peloton going along at the moment. They're just working away at a steady pace, and no problem to go back into the cars, take your time, take the Mosettes and come into the Peloton again. It's when it's really going fast, and that's the time when it's difficult to get the Mosette as well. When you arrive into the feed station at 50 kilometers per hour to grab your Mosette, there's huge confusion. Surprising today that there's a lot of riders miss their Mosettes, considering they're going through at a very slow rate. You would expect riders to be able to get into position, get to the right hand side of the road and collect their Mosette from the team helper standing on the roadside, but a lot of them seem to miss their Mosettes. But when it's real fast, well, then it's chaos going to the feed station. Sometimes when they grab the Mosettes also, they miss them, they slip out of their hands, and then you have the Mosettes around the road with all the food, the bottles everywhere, and of course there's so many riders miss the Mosettes, and if it's going racing real full on, then it's very difficult to get back to the car, get back to the front of the peloton, so it can be a problem in that situation.
I mean, it's amazing someone hasn't come up with a better way of delivering it. I don't know whether you could drop it in by helicopter or whether there's any sort of extraordinary innovation that's there. Speaking of innovation, we're heading towards Vicenza today, and that's the home of Tullio Campagnolo, who came up with so many great innovations in his time. Maybe the Musette delivery but at the feed zone is something that needs to be looked at. Of course, in the early days of Grand Tour racing, they had to go in and get a card stamped, didn't they? So it used to be bedlam. They'd go in, they'd race in, get their card stamped, clippity-clop back out onto their bikes, and all try and get together. Yeah.
Well, they still do that in the Sportice, of course, where you have to clippity-clop in and push for your position to get into the station to get your car stamped. But the Mosette situation, the cars taken from the cars is one thing which I think was considered, but it also becomes dangerous because so many riders going back into the cavalcade of cars, and then it's confusion. So the feed station on the side of the road, where there is a zone, it goes from maybe 2 kilometres or 3 kilometres, and you have to take your Mosette at that point. It's not where you can go along the route anywhere and stop with a team personnel and do that. There's a specific section on the road where it's that 2-3 kilometres, and you have to feed the riders in that space. And if you do it outside, well, then you're liable to get a time penalty or a fine for doing that. And if you do it more than one occasion, it gets bigger again, and the time would possibly get bigger. So it's probably the best thing, and there's probably been a lot of things looked at, but it's still, the feed station is, I think, the safest one.
That's the one that works. And another thing that we've discussed again on this race, and you'll see them after the feed zone, there's the camel green station where any musettes or bottles or empty bottles or whatever, any sort of waste products that the riders need to get rid of can be dispensed with there, and that's a gathering point for any of that rubbish. And of course there are crews that go along behind the stage and pick up all the rubbish that is left by the riders, and there's not too much of it really that isn't already hoovered up by the fans. They love to get bottles and musettes. So from that point of view, the environmental impact of the race is minimal. Maxime Belkov looking cool in his shades, and all the riders delighted to have got the dark sunnies on today. Rubiano, one of the Colombian Revolution. We were just chatting earlier on today, and Sean, you quite fancy the Colombians for the World Championships maybe a bit later in the year. We're in Florence. It's a hilly circuit.
Yes, it's a very hilly circuit, and it's one certainly for the guys who can climb real well, aggressive riders, and as we've seen in this Giro, the Colombians are very aggressive, and they will have a complete team, and they will have a strong team. When you look at the other nations, they would have difficulty getting so many climbers on a team. I think Colombia will be considered, the route is going to be a very testing one.
Well, we'll watch out for that. Yet to have a Colombian world champion. And on the back of the group, not looking too concerned at the moment, Brian Bulgak of Lotto Belisol. He's got a teammate up front in the break. That's Gert Dox, 24 years of age. And plenty of roundabouts and road furniture for the riders to encounter today. Chris Browd suggests, why not have a different feed station for each team at different places on the road? I suppose you'd be vulnerable to attacks if you were a leading rider when it came to your turn to collect the food. Lee McCumiskey suggests, why don't they use motorbikes to carry the 9 musettes and the riders can take them off the rear just as they take the water bottles? That's not a bad idea. It's interesting.
Well, I think motorbikes, the number of motorbikes in the race, the TV camera motorbikes, the photographers, commissar motorbikes, there's a lot of them in there. And for the photographers, I know in the Tour of France, in other races as well, they allow so many photographers on the front of the bunch to take some photographs. So it is a problem with motorbikes. Is too many of them in there. If you have more to do the feed station, I think it's going to cause more problems. Too many bikes in the peloton.
Durbridge just making his way back on. May have been back at the car. May have had to take the opportunity of a natural break. No danger there, and still the gap between them is just under 3 minutes, so it's being maintained up front. This steady pace that is, as far as the bunch behind concerned, not too fast and not too slow. And then the motorbikes are they tougher to control for the commissars? It's tougher to keep the whip hand there, I wonder.
It is difficult for the commissars to control the motorbikes because in a point of the race where there's a lot of action, there's something happening, that's when the photographers really get busy, and the too many motorbikes come around the peloton, on the front of the peloton or wherever it may be, so that is certainly a problem. In the Tour of France as well, the motorbikes, you would hear a lot of the time over race radio, the motorbikes have to move on, and you would hear the commissars or the race director giving orders to move out. You're not allowed to be there, it's not your turn, all of that. So there is a lot of problems with the motorbikes, and I think for doing motorbike to give the mosettes to the riders, it will increase again by so many teams. If you have 25 teams in the race, well, that's 25 motorbikes. It's a lot of motorbikes in the peloton. And when do you do it? Again, you come to the situation, as one of our viewers mentioned, well, you have points for different teams. It doesn't work because a team who's got their mosette, they're going to ride on the front and go for it, and the team who hasn't got it, well, then they're going to have difficulty getting the mosette if they come very quickly through the feed station. I think what we've got at the moment, maybe not the perfect situation, but from an idea point of view, I don't think there's any better at the moment.
We haven't come up with the perfect solution to that yet. So musettes at the feed zone it is. Didn't cause any huge drama. Occasionally, as Sean says, you get crashes, but we haven't seen any on this year's race, and we hope that continues all the way to Sunday. Mark Cavendish looking very relaxed at the moment in behind his team. His team look pretty relaxed as well. He's lost Gert Stegemans, of course. His last lead-out man, his number 1 lead-out man. Stegemans retired immediately after the 4th of Cavendish's successes on this year's race. Didn't start the next day. And how much will that impact on Mark Cavendish's ability to deliver a 5th stage success and a maximum haul of 25 points towards his goal of achieving that red points jersey classification win on Sunday? Nick Squilari points out that Guardini was kicked out of the Giro last year for hanging onto the car. Officials don't seem to mind booting big names. Well, if they get it wrong, then they ought to be. So, yeah, fair play to them. Luke Durbridge is making sure there are no communication difficulties. And what's he likely to be hearing in terms of his instructions for how they're riding?
Well, it's a really difficult one for the breakaway of 4 out front. They know that the peloton is just control the situation and allow them to stay out there at that 2.5 minutes, and up front still just over 100 kilometers to go. It's a long ways, and they cannot start riding fast to try and pull out the advantage, because the peloton will just open a little bit and keep them at that distance, and you just keep on rolling, and hopefully you can hold on to 2.5 minute advantage and get into the final 25-30 kilometers. a little bit more maybe and then just go for it. But you know, they're in a situation where they know it's not looking good for the breakaway at all today.
2.5 minutes advantage to those riders up front. Doesn't seem to be huge intensity from either the break or the bunch. I don't want to decry their efforts up front, because it's been a very, very long and hard bike race, and the weather's been absolutely appalling. So these riders are perhaps even more tired than they might have been. The weather, of course, continues to be a big topic, and lots of discussion about what's likely to happen in the next few days. We've got mountain time trial tomorrow, and then 2 huge days in the Dolomites coming after that on Friday and Saturday, and multiple ascents of up to 2,000 meters as we get sight of the absolutely drop-dead gorgeous sights over Verona. What a thoroughly beautiful city it is. So many amazing monuments, not least of course the Palazzo dei Mercanti, the arena that's in shot there. Castel Vecchio with its fortified bridge, and of course this the setting for the story of Romeo and Juliet, which has fascinated the world for so many years. Okay, one of the most interesting men in this race has been Stefano Perazzi. He's kept us entertained with his efforts to win this mountains classification jersey, and it's going well for him so far.
Bisogna guardare gli uomini di classifica della maglia azzurra. Quest'oggi c'erano.
Yes, we need to look at the men in the classification for the blue jersey. Today there were Rodriguez and Chalapud. I joined the breakaway and I took some important points overall in the last classified hill, where they didn't collect any points. So clearly Stefano Perazzi is going well. Of all the riders that were out in the break yesterday, he managed to hang on in the leaders group at the end, so it was a great ride from him.
Yes, it was a strong ride, and on the final climb, that was where he really did a great ride, because he was pushing from the very beginning of the climb, trying to keep the advantage, the tiny advantage that they had, and you know, just got caught before the GPM, and just held it in the group of big favourites there, and came out and got very valuable points, finishing second over the top, and then survived all the way to the finish with the group of big favourites after being out in the breakaway all day. He's definitely in good shape, and you know, riding strong, up in the brakes on many occasions.
Inside 100 kilometres to go, 4 riders up front. Their gap is shrinking fast though to the bunch behind. Welcome back. It's stage 17 of the Giro d'Italia, with Mark Cavendish, as indicated there, wearing the red points leaders jersey. He's just got a narrow 6-point advantage over Cadel Evans. Carlos Betancourt has been placing very strongly as well in the mountain stages, and indeed in the transition stages, as we saw yesterday. But Cavendish it is, the sprinter, who has that lead, in a fascinating battle it's been between these two riders. Can Cavendish accrue enough points today and Sunday to better the total of Cadel Evans, who'll have great opportunities to add to his maximum in tomorrow's stage, the time trial, and then the 2 mountain stages that follow that. There's the overall climbers standings. We saw Stefano Perazzi before the break explaining to us how things went yesterday, and well, they're going very well indeed. Looks like it's locked out, but of course you've got the likes of Betancourt sitting on 32 points, and if he has an absolute monster day in the Dolomites, or even 2 of them, then he could get in amongst them. But I'd say at this stage that Perazzi pretty much has it locked out. John, what do you reckon? Would you commit to that one?
Yes, you would have to agree, because he is you know, really riding well, riding strong. He's in good shape. It's not a case where he picked up a lot of points in the first half of the race and then, you know, struggling to just get into the breakaways. He has been, you know, very aggressive and looking in super form, and yesterday proved that once again. And not only yesterday, there's other days as well when he has been out in the break and, you know, being aggressive on the climbs and taking valuable points. And I think difficult to see anybody escaping from that up in the general classification of the mountains the mountain points, mountains overall. So it looks like Perazzi should be able to get all the way to the finish of this race, holding on to that jersey.
Sky Pro Cycling continue to lead the team classification. Their lead now is at 4:27. They've got 4:27 over Astana. Blanco and Movistar are locked 5 minutes and 21 seconds in arrears of the Sky Pro Cycling squad. So that advantage has shrunk a little, and it matters a lot to the teams, doesn't it, the team's classification?
Well, the teams, some teams really take us seriously. Other teams, depending on what way you're in the general classification. And for Astana, for example, I don't think they're going to be too concerned about that. They're thinking about the pink jersey, Vincenzo Nibali, and defending that all the way to the finish of this one. So that's, that's their main target. Where with some of the other teams, Sky, at the situation at the moment, I'm not sure if they will target the team classification, but there's other teams there who are close, still close in the classification. Movistar, for example, who are only down at 5 minutes 20. It's nothing in the team classification when you consider the time trial first of all tomorrow, then the 2 big mountain stages, because 3 men in each stage have to count. So the best 3 men in the stage each day, and that can change a lot, because you can have 2 men from the team riding well, but the third man can be a long ways down, and he can cost you valuable minutes on a big mountain stage.
Well, it seems all very relaxed in the peloton, and they have earned this day. They've had so many tough ones. They're still using energy, remember, and you can be sure when they light the blue touch paper closer to the finish, it'll be absolutely frenetic and there'll be riders shelled all over the place. But at the moment, it's relatively controlled in there. Vincenzo Nibali won't be complaining about that. He wants as trouble-free a run to the line as he's possibly able to get. And his fellow countryman Santoromita of the BMC squad having a chat with Vincenzo Nibali. They're foes in terms of general classification. Of course, Santoromita in support of Cadel Evans, but they're colleagues in the pro peloton, and always an opportunity to chat. Domenico Pozzovivo of AG Tour Le Mondial riding in the wake of Vincenzo Nibali there, the white and brown outfit. And Pozzovivo didn't have a great day yesterday, lost out once more, and has now dropped out of the top 10. He was listed in the top 10 after yesterday's stage, but Robert Hessink had his problem within the last 3 kilometres. He was in a group of 4 up front, and his chain became derailed, went in between the bottom sprocket and the frame, and the difficulties getting it back on meant that he dropped. In fact, he ended up behind the Vincenzo Nibali group, lost 23 seconds on the stage, but he was given that time back by the panel of commissars afterwards. So he moves back up into the top 10, and that pushed Pozzovivo down. So Pozzovivo missed the split yesterday, had a tough day. So himself and Sant'Ambrogio perhaps showing signs of a little bit of wear and tear. Sant'Ambrogio, as I say, was sitting at 4th, Sean, and he had the bad day yesterday, and afterwards he said, well, a lot of people expected me to have it, and now I've had my bad day. Anyone can have one bad day, and that is absolutely true. And I think that's probably what keeps Cadel Evans going, is the thought that perhaps he's already had his worst day, and maybe there's one for Vincenzo Nibali coming in the next couple of days.
Well, that's always the worry, and sometimes the riders who are down in the general classification, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, they're hoping that the big favourite. And here, of course, Nibali is really impressive right through this race, never showed any weakness on any of the stages, and we did see yesterday, Sant'Ambrogio suffering. He'll be hoping it was his off day, that he's not getting tired as the race go on, because that's the other situation when you get into 2.5 weeks of racing and weather conditions. You take all that into account in this race. I think we could see more situations as we see from Sant'Ambrogio yesterday, and he's at now 4:57. He was at 2:47, and he went from 4th place, 6th place in general classification. It's a big slip, and the difficult thing now is to get it back on the riders that went ahead of him. And Scarponi, of course, is one of his main rivals for the place in the top 4 or 5 of the general classification. And Pozzovivo, he lost valuable time as well yesterday. He lost 1.5 minutes, which is a lot for him. He's now at 7:34. Again, the big mountain stages, is he losing time because he isn't in a good position for the descent, or is he starting to suffer as well? That is the question really, and I think we will see that picture maybe tomorrow in the time trial a little bit, but certainly on Friday, Saturday we will see the bigger picture, who is, you know, supporting this race well, who is still really in good shape, and the ones who are a little bit starting to suffer, fatigue is setting in, we will see them very quickly on Friday and Saturday.
It was interesting after the stage yesterday, Luca Scinto of the Vini Fantini team, the DS for that squad, he said he should have brought De Luca back from the group of favourites up front to help Mauro Sant'Ambrogio, and that he took a little bit of responsibility for it. Would De Luca have gone back?
Well, I think De Luca would have went back, because he went back you know, to the bunch quite early when the breakaway wasn't going to succeed, and he had a bit of time to recover there, and you know, he would have been able to, you know, make a better pace. But when he's on a climb, it's not a lot you can do for a rider. When he's on the limit, if you go to, you know, to pace him on the climb, it doesn't, you know, have a great it doesn't have any great advantages, because on a climb there's drafting is not great. So I don't think it would change anything from yesterday, having De Luca or having another rider from Vini Fantini with Sant'Ambrogio. So and then it was very late in the stage as well to rectify the situation when it happened. It was just too late, and it's just one of those things that you know, it does happen, and you know, he's not the only one in the race, as we see yesterday. There's other ones as well. Trofimov lost a bit of time. Kivalowski, he went down from, you know, 11th place to 14th. You know, he lost quite valuable time as well, and they were the teams who were controlling the situation yesterday. A long ways out, we see Radio Shack and the team of as I said, Trofimov, Katusha. They were the ones who were controlling the situation, and both of them lost out, you know, quite a bit of time yesterday. But for those guys, you know, they were that little bit further down in general classification anyway. But again, is it that, you know, the distance yesterday? We must remember yesterday was a 230 plus kilometre stage, considered, you know,
just after the rest day as well.
After the rest day and after what they've been through. So I think
why you know, the point of the rest day is to make you feel better. Why does it make you sometimes feel less good?
Well, I think some riders have difficulty when you're riding every day for 8 days, 9 days, and then you have a rest day, and you try and, you know, rest as much as possible. But if you rest too much, then you have difficulty getting the body moving the next day, and you can feel a little bit under your best. And it's a situation that a lot of riders suffer with. So how much do you do on a rest day is always the problem. You know, some riders like to do an hour, other riders like to do 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Everybody differ a little bit, and you have to do what you feel works best for you individually on the rest day. But yesterday, you know, the stage wasn't a difficult one. It's where there's a big mountain stage following the rest day. That is the real danger point, and you have to be so careful. And some riders just always suffer after the rest day.
Part of the problem as well was that the rest day location. You had, there was quite a funny tweet from Taylor Finney. He said he'd 3 options. One was to go up to Galibier, another one was to go up, I can't remember what was the other hill was, and the other one was to stay in bed, and he was going for option 3. And I think he needed to try and recover. Of course, we saw yesterday that unfortunately he had to retire out on the road with saddle sores. But that was part of the issue, that if they wanted to go for a spin at all, they had to go up a hill. And quite a few teams, I think, they actually put their riders up on the rollers, which must have been mind-bendingly boring for them, but they actually sat up there for 45 minutes, an hour, maybe more, just to keep the legs turning.
Yes, well, and it's a situation in the big tour where you're into the mountains and you have a rest day, you know, after maybe a big day or 2 days in the mountains, and then it's a difficult one to where do you go training, because you have no flat roads. So some riders, as you said, might go on the rollers, other riders would ride up the climb, but at a very slow pace, and, you know, a light gear, and you can do that. And but yeah, the problem here is as well the conditions, the colder conditions here. If you ride up the climb, you have to get back down it again, and, you know, in the cold. So that is more of a problem than it would be like in the Tour of France in July.
Cameras focusing quite a lot on Ventoso of the Movistar team, the reigning Spanish National Road Race champion, looking very relaxed in there at the moment, as indeed is Thomas Damuso, best placed of Team Argos Shimano on general classification, but well, he's 52nd, 1 hour and 23 minutes in arrears. He's at the back of the bunch, taking it as easily as he can. Looks like they've started to step it up again on the top of on the front of the bunch, because the 4 riders out front have certainly been riding hard, and they've extended their advantage now out to just over 4.5 minutes. So it's back to work after that little rest moment, little moment of respite for the bunch and for the riders out front. So this is the cat and mouse affair that they'll try and play. Group out front might back it off for a little while, and then the bunch will back it off, and then they'll attack again and try and time it and try and carry as much time as they possibly can and get to that hill before the rest of the bunch. Okay, 4 riders out front, 4.5 minutes their advantage. Join us for the next part of this great stage after these. Welcome back to stage 17 of the Giro d'Italia of 2013. The riders are making their way from Caravaggio to Vicenza today. 214 kilometers in total, and there is a group of 4 riders up front who have established a maximum advantage now, 4 minutes and 42 seconds. And the bunch are starting to mean business, because they're aware that this advantage has extended within the last 10k. It's gone out from just under 3 minutes to 4 minutes 42, as Vincenzo Nibali continues to chat to people in the peloton. Visconti, 3 times a national road race champion, and now a winner of a Giro stage as a result of that superb success on the Galibier last weekend. 4 riders up front. Rubiano Chavez of the Androni Giocattoli squad is at the back of these 4. The man on the front here is Luke Durbridge of Orica Green Edge, wearing the green and gold as national road race champion of Australia. And the next man up is Gert Dox of the Lotto Belisol squad, 24 years of age, the Belgian rider. It's Rubiano next up for Androni Giocattoli, sitting in 3rd position in the white and blue colours of Androni. And in the red and white of Katusha is Maxime Belkov, winner of stage 9 of this year's race to Firenze. Wonderful solo success in the rain. Came in just ahead of Carlos Betancourt, who appeared out of the favourites group. Mopped up the rest of the break, but Belkov hung on. There's one man that AG2R will perhaps be looking towards today. It's Manuel Belletti. We just got a quick sight of. He'd be one of their 2 fast men, making his way back up through the cars. Wearing number 13 and choosing not to turn one of them upside down. So clearly not superstitious, not about numbers anyway. And Belletti is right back in there himself, and David Apollonio are the 2 quick men. If they get over the hill to the 4, then they could perhaps produce a sprint success for AG2R. AG2R having a fine Giro d'Italia. Currently 2 riders well to the 4. Carlos Betancourt, the aforementioned, 7th overall at the moment, 5:15 in arrears, and wearing the white jersey as leader of the Young Riders classification. And Domenico Pozzovivo has had his difficulties in recent days, but is currently 11th overall. 7 minutes and 34 seconds behind Vincenzo Nibali. It's Argos Shimano on the front, aided by Omega Pharma Quick-Step, and the Movistar squad have gone to the front as well. They perhaps fancy their chances today. And Ventoso was 3rd in line of those riders. He'd be the more likely of them if they get over the hill. He says has a decent turn of pace at the end.
Yes, and he's a rider who can get over the smaller hills, as we have in the final today. That's 4 or 5 kilometres. So it'll be interesting, and if they do manage to do Ventoso today, what a story from Movistar to win, the 3 stages on the trot. It's difficult to see that.
Are they getting greedy?
Yes, it's difficult to see that. We will see the sprinters getting left behind. But again, you just never know on the climbs stage we're in at this point in the race. There's a lot of things can happen, and depending on how the race and how the other teams control the situation in the end. But It looked very like they were going to have a group sprint, but surprising that we're seeing Movistar very much at the front of the moment with their main sprinter Ventoso.
That's Oscar Gatto, who buried himself to get over the final hill yesterday, got up to Sant'Ambrogio and gave him a bit of a hand to try and limit his losses. So did good work for the team yesterday. And he's continuing to do good work, hovering up and down between team car and teammates. Mark Cavendish in the red jersey there, nicely nestling in behind all his teammates, just one riding shotgun for him. Just ahead of him is Mikael Dolas. Cavendish can't lip read, but clearly he's needs a little bit of help from his team. Just heard that Kirill Pozniakov of Baku Cycling has won the stage of the Ross today. No word on how Sean's team are doing. No doubt we'll be told. And problems for Androni Giocattoli out on the road, having to wind up that quick release because they've got lower tabs on, which actually it's probably a pretty good time to talk about quick releases, because we're making our way to Vicenza today as Diego Rosa has been on the attack in the last few days. Diego Rosa gets back up and going, and he'll get back in pretty quickly. But that was an example of the quick release skewer, which is one of the amazing innovations created and presented to cycle racing by Tullio Campagnolo. We're making our way towards the home of the Campagnolo company in Vicenza today, and he created that because his fingers are absolutely frozen on some big mountain in the Dolomites back in the 20s. He was a handy racing cyclist, was Tullio Campagnolo. He won the Tour of Lombardy, he won Milan-San Remo, but he found himself having to change the wheel over. They had a sprocket on each side of the rear hub, and that was the only way. That they had 2 gears on their bikes available to them in those days, and they had to take the rear wheel off with wing nuts, swap it round. So he had 2 inventions to come up with as a result of that. One was the quick release skewer, which really is an absolutely gorgeous piece of engineering, which doesn't require lower tabs unless operated by someone who really doesn't know what they're doing. And of course he came up with the derailleur gear. Initially it was a rod affair on the seat stay. There were a couple of rods that would activate levers that would allow the chain to be unhooked from one sprocket to another, and then he came up with the Grand Sport. Sometime in the 40s, I think, he came up with the Grand Sport rear derailleur, which is a parallelogram design, and very, very similar to the design that's still in use today. So the quick release skewer and the parallelogram derailleur are 2 incredible innovations in cycling that have lasted and endured to this point. And Campagnolo is still innovating as well, of course, because they came up with electronic gear sets and 11-speed. Well, first of all, they went to 10-speed. I think they were the first to come up with a 10-speed. And now, of course, they were the first to come up with 11-speed, which has been emulated by the other group set manufacturers.
And of course, the Campagnolo for the young aspiring cyclists in the 25-30 years ago, Campagnolo was, it was a dream to have the Campagnolo equipment. Everybody just loved it, and it's changed a lot since, of course, with Shimano. Then you have SRAM, you had Mavic for a while, so there's a lot more into it. But if you go back 30 years ago, certainly when I was starting out my biking, you looked at bikes with Campagnolo and you just dreamed about having a complete equipped Campagnolo bike.
You had Mavic during the big years with Cast, didn't you? But you did have Campag at various points in your career?
Yes, I started out with Campag when I was my first 2 years professional. I used Campagnolo, and then I went to a team, and it was Mavic for a number of years. And Mavic had the full group set for many years, and then they dropped it again. It wasn't working as they expected it to be, and I went to other ones then, Shimano, of course, and My best years with Campagnolo was when I was with the PTM team. I won the Tour of Lombardy with Campagnolo. I won Liège Bastogne Liège with Campagnolo. So I had a few very nice wins on Campagnolo equipment, but the big number of wins in my career was on Mavic equipped.
Just celebrating their 80th year this year, Campagnolo. I think my favourite bike was I had this metallic blue Rossen Columbus Superlight frame with Campagnolo Super Record, and God, I wish I still had that bike. Absolutely gorgeous. Now look at the peloton in one long line because the hammer is going down. They're trying to reel in this breakaway. The breakaway still riding well out front. Belkov, Rubiano, Dox and Luke Durbridge. But the Amiga Pharma Quick-Step team have decided that 5 minutes and 5 seconds is really more than they need. Inside 50 miles to go. Movistar believe that they've got great opportunities today. Argus Shimano too. Luka Mezgec and plenty of other riders. We've lost so many good sprinters. Matthew Harley-Goss has gone from the race. Nasser Bouhanni. Haven't spoken much about Elia Viviani, still on the race for Cannondale. Wasn't able to step it up for the last sprint opportunity a few days ago. That was into Carrasco. Nizzolo was second on that occasion with the Mezgec third. It's good weather for the riders, which they'll be greatly relieved about. But 5 minutes and 5 seconds is a little bit of a danger zone for those riders up front. Still plenty of time to close that one down, but and if they get to that final hill with an advantage, and it is pretty narrow up it, and it's lots of technical stuff on the way down and making their way to the finish with lots of road furniture as well. You never know. They left it very, very late indeed to mop up the break on the third of Cavendish's 4 wins. That was the spin from Longarone to Treviso, stage 12 last Thursday, and they only caught them within the last 500 meters. The weather conditions altogether much more clement today than they were on that occasion, but still a little bit of miscommunication and some tired legs, and it's easy enough for them to get it wrong too. PMC squad looking after Cadel Evans, and Evans is the fourth of the 5 BMC riders that you see on your screen there in the red and black colours. Kais is important, not least since the departure from the race of Gert Stegemans. Leo Kajsa was earmarked as the second last man off, but he might well be the man that takes Mark Cavendish all the way to the last 200 metres of the race.
Yes, normally that would be the case, that Kajsa would be one of the men for the final, but it does look the situation today, because if he's riding now with 76 kilometres to the finish, it's a change of situation, and maybe that he feels that he's not good enough for the end, and he decides to ride now and control the breakaway out front. And we can see there's a bit of urgency for the breakaway. Back in the bunch is the same situation, because over 5 minutes now, we see Mark Cavendish some time ago that he was on the radio to his director sportif and getting information and exactly what to do, but it's pushing on quite a bit more now, and the peloton, we can see they're going to control the situation for the moment. 75 kilometers to go. There's plenty of time to do that, but it's definitely, putting a little bit more pressure on the peloton to control the breakaway out front.
So Vicente Arenas is going back to the car. Kenny De Haas is the man that he'll be looking to get up to the front at the conclusion of this stage. Still over 5 minutes advantage for these 4 riders up front. Please rejoin us, please. You're very welcome back to stage 17 of the Giro d'Italia. The riders are making their way to Vicenza They've got 73.5 kilometres to go. There are 4 riders up front, and their advantage is holding steady at just over 5 minutes. And there's been lots of activity in the bunch in the last 10 kilometres or so. I say activity up front in terms of setting a fast pace by Omega Pharma Quickstep, aided by Argus Shimano. The Movistar team holding a watching brief there as well, and the pace is certainly on, but they're not making any big inroads into the pace of the group up front. So those 4 riders have really stepped on the gas and are doing a very, very impressive job at the moment. Maxime Belkov is up front for Katusha, not for the first time in this year's Giro d'Italia. Miguel Rubiano of Androni Giocattoli is in there as well. This is Belkov for Katusha in the red and white colours. Luke Durbridge makes his way to the front. He's followed in turn by Gert Dox, and this is Rubiano of Androni Giocattoli. Gert Dox representing Lotto Belisol, Luke Durbridge of Orica Green Edge. And those 4 riders doing very impressive work. Durbridge on the front at the moment, of course, is a double Australian national time trial champion. Was 6th in the individual time trial to Saltara last Saturday week. And Durbridge is capable of generating massive power, and he's definitely the sort of guy that you want in a break like this. We make our way towards Belfiore. The first intermediate sprint, or 2 intermediate sprints along the way. Remember, there's a little bit of time bonus, but certainly the first of those sprints is going to be taken by the group out front, so the time bonus is of little relevance to them. The intermediate sprints competition, though, is very much up for grabs. And I can tell you that Maxime Belkov is currently 2nd in that competition. He's 1 point behind Rafael Andriato of Vini Fantini. Andriato not represented in this break, so it's an excellent opportunity for Belkov to edge ahead. Cameron Worf is just 2 points behind in 3rd place for Cannondale. He's not there either. Cannondale, though, are on the front of the bunch, so obviously Elia Viviani says, well, OK, maybe today I can get over this hill and I will be able to get in contention for that much-needed stage victory. Cannondale team are motivated. The individual sprints competition has some points on offer. There's also points on offer as well for the overall points competition, but only for the first 6 over the line. Will be interesting to see whether perhaps Mark Cavendish thinks about going up. There's 4 riders out front, so there is 2 points on offer for the overall points competition for 5th over the line. So maybe Mark Cavendish might just stick his nose out of the wind. And that sprint comes at San Bonifacio, and that's 63.7 kilometres to go. It's got a sight of the Colombian sprinter Duque sitting well up the line, decided to peel off as he's coming back to his car. And that is the indication that the bunch are pressing on here. But still, the gap, well, it's come down by a few seconds in the last couple of kilometres, but it's not coming down in huge chunks. So they're doing a good job out there, Sean, aren't they?
Yes, they're riding strong out front, as we can see. You know, they're pushing on here much more than they were an hour ago, an hour plus. And also on the Peloton, we can see the reason the front end of the Peloton is up the pace a lot, just to keep it under control. And it's grown out to a nice advantage, 5 minutes with 71 kilometres to go. We've seen on the front of the bunch there's a lot of teams up there. Omega Pharma Quickstep have Kaisa, who was riding, but apart from that there's not anybody else contributing, but there's a lot of other teams got involved. We see Argus is up there, we see Cannondale, there's quite a few teams. Movistar are also there. I'm not sure if they're actually riding in the front, but they're sitting very close to the front up there, and so a lot of teams here contributing, and that's it's a one where I think Omega Pharma Quickstep said, OK, we're prepared to chase with 1 or 2 men, but we're not going to do all the chasing alone. If you guys want to get this one back to a bunch sprint, you're going to have to contribute as well. And I would reckon that is the agreement there, because there's 4 teams at the moment contributing to the pulling on the front of the peloton.
Yeah, Cavendish has been pretty vocal about that, hasn't he? I mean, in every interview after he wins, he said he can't understand why they haven't won a stage. Why don't they get up and do some work? Well, showing a bit more motivation today.
well, if you come to the finish with Cavendish and you see his sprinting ability, it's difficult, you know, for the teams to start riding, because they know if they ride with Omega Pharma Quickstep, and he has 3 or 4 riders in the final who are still feeling quite strong, then it's impossible to beat him if he gets the good lead out. If he has to, you know, commit his team very earlier on, and then he's pretty much alone, you have a little chance of beating. You have some chance of beating, let's call it. And I think, you know, they have said, okay, we've won 4 stages here with Matt Cavendish. If you guys want to get this one to a finish, it's up to you guys to contribute as well and to control it. A long ways out from the finish, at 100 kilometres to go, they have to start riding. And I would say that is the agreement between the teams at the moment, because there's a lot of different teams in the mix on the front of the peloton.
Yeah, but they know that Cavendish, you know, the 4 stages isn't enough for him, because it's not so much a 5th stage he wants, it's 25 points towards that points competition. I mean, I just don't believe that Mark Cavendish, when he said that, well, I'm not really all that bothered about the points jersey, I'm pretty sure that he's still in this race now because he really wants that points competition.
Well, I think you have to play the game a bit and, you know, play a bit of bluff, and that's what you do. And it's definitely happening here today, because we can see that there's, you know, a number of different teams riding on the front. And I think if you try and control it, a breakaway for a long stage again today, at this point of the race, it's a difficult one to do, and you're going to find yourself probably alone. We must remember the climb in the end as well. A team that's, you know, really rides in the front with 3 or 4 guys, you know, guaranteed to lose them on this final climb of 5 kilometres close to the finish. So for that reason, that's, you know, seen in the front of the bunch, there's a number of teams just putting one man up there, and by doing that, well, then everybody has, you know, a number of riders to go on, hopefully to the finish, or at least go on to the last climb and try and keep that sprinter in there.
So now it's starting to come down a bit, but still a healthy advantage for the 4 riders up front, just under 5 minutes. And at DQ Sport is the Twitter handle. Gordon Comrie asks, other than team leader's number, do any of the race numbers in the team relate to anything in particular, i.e. the sprinter? Well, no, no, not really. It would be the straight answer to that, I suppose. In fact, it's not really a team leader's number. More often than not, your head man for the GC is likely to have the 1. So Cadel Evans is 61, and Vincenzo Nibali is number 31. But it's not a hard and fast rule. So if you look at, say, Vinny Fantini, well, Sant'Ambrosio is number 228, and Stefano Garzelli is 221, a man who was never expected to be up in general classification, but it's perhaps in deference to the fact that he's a former winner of the Giro d'Italia. So the 1 doesn't have to go to your top guy, and you've got perhaps a situation in AG Tour Le Mondial where Domenico Pozzovivo would have been expected to be their top GC man. He's wearing number 11, but it's Carlos Betancourt that's ahead of him on general classification at the moment. He's wearing number 15, but that's so there's no hard and fast rule about it. And for the sprinters, it could be any number really. Mark Cavendish actually wears the 1 in his team. He's far from the top placed Omega Pharma Quickstep rider, who is incidentally Michael Golas in 60th position, but of course that entire team was based around Cavendish and was all about getting him to as many sprint successes as they possibly could. So Omega Pharma Quickstep are sharing it up front with Cannondale and Argus Shimano. Movistar still right to the front. Haven't seen too much activity from them on the front. Meanwhile, Luke Durbridge, just 22 years of age, is making a name for himself at the front of the Giro d'Italia. His first Giro. He's from Greenmount in Western Australia. Took the GC honours in the Tour du Poitou-Charentes last year, and won Circuit Cycliste Sarthe as well. He's won a couple of stages in the time trial at that as well. Ferrazzi suffering a little bit on the back of the bunch. Adam Hansen too for Lotto Belisol. He's got a teammate in the break, and Lotto Belisol right at the very back. And it's a tough day out there now because they're riding up front in a big way. And a very impressive performance by the 3 riders on the front. Vincenzo Nibali is comfortably ensconced in the Maglia Rosa, in amongst those sky blue Astana jerseys. Astana all in line astern behind Cannondale and in front of BMC. Christian Canese up there for the Sky team. Sign of Rigoberto Urán. And Rubiano does his turn on the front. And the small Colombian pounding out a rhythm, but not providing a whole lot of shelter to Maxim Belkov. Much the taller rider, the Russian currently sitting 150th overall, 28 years of age. And it's already been a very successful Giro d'Italia for him.
Difficult roads for the breakaway here, as we can see. Long straight roads, not the perfect situation for a small breakaway of 4 riders. It would be much better if it was a little bit undulating, maybe turning quite a lot. It would play advantage to the breakaway, but these long straight roads, real difficult for a breakaway, very energy sapping. It does get a little bit better as we get closer to the finish, but they go on for a long time, this sort of route. The final 30 kilometers it gets a little more turning and not these big long straight roads, which must be a killer when you're out in front and you can see they're just kilometre and a half straight on, and very energy sapping.
I think that's why they're called kilometre. Donald Young wants to know your opinion, Sean. Has Cav's style and varied abilities in sprint changed much over the years, or is it just talent developing? Is he a changing rider, an evolving rider?
No, I don't think he's changed. It's the same situation where they rely on the team big time, and the big train to set it up in the end. It's going on for many years now. It started off with Cipollini, and then it went on from there. The difference with Mark Cavendish, he can do it on his own. When he finds himself without a lead-out train, we've seen in this race he won a stage there where he was pretty much alone in the final kilometres. Some of the big sprinters have real difficulty in doing that. Pataki was a rider who he needed a train to take him all the way to the final 200 metres where he would take up the sprint himself. Cavendish, he just can go from wheel to wheel, move about in the group in the top 10 or 15 riders in the final kilometres and still come out and win the sprints.
Leo the Line wants to know, are there any women who are directors sportive in men's racing? Too many. I can think of Sherry Pridham, who heads up the team rally squad in the UK. Of course, they're involved in continental racing now in a big way. Indeed, there aren't actually that many women DSs in women's racing either, for whatever reason. It's certainly a situation that is evolving fast as women's racing becomes more and more popular.
Maybe they don't know nothing about the tactic.
Oh God, don't say that. I hasten to add, you are joking, right?
That's a joke.
Yeah. No, I definitely wouldn't say that.
Well, not in Europe. On the European scene, we don't see any women director sportees, but I think in the American scene you probably would see more, and that's where it all started, because in the early part of my career, there was no women working as personnel in the teams, and then it changed. 7-Eleven, I think, was one of the first teams to change in the European scene, where they
Shelley Versace,
yes, where they had women coming in doing masseur and team helpers, and it went on from there. And now, of course, we see in all the teams, when you go through the feeding station, we see so many women there handing up the mousette, so it's totally changed. But back in the Tour of France in the early 80s, Felix Le Viton, I don't think he allowed any women to be involved in the team structures.
It was medieval, wasn't it?
Yes, well, of course, that was a special one, and he was also a special one, Le Viton, and then it changed after that, and 7-Eleven was the one where it all changed.
So confirmation of the intermediate sprint, the first of the two in today's stage. Maxim Belkov takes the points, and that's 5 points towards the intermediate sprints competition, so that moves him into the lead of that competition by 4 points. And Rubiano took second, and Gert Dox took third. They were less, I think, concerned about how this one was going. And it will be interesting to see whether Mark Cavendish pokes his nose out of the window, as I say, and is perhaps interested in an extra couple of points. He only lost the points competition last year by 1 point, remember. Does he want to burn a match and use up a little bit of energy that he might need to get over that last hill? So riders working their way towards San Bonifacio in the main bunch. Ali Gaylor's asking on numbers still, do the riders only get one set? Some today look pale and creased like they've been washed. I think they get a couple of sets, but it wouldn't be absolutely unheard of for riders to wash jerseys with numbers still attached.
As you get to the end of the race, of course, riders are getting so tired they haven't got the energy to take the numbers off before they put them to the wash.
Yes. Well, Tim Lichtart's been involved in a lot of the action, particularly in the first weeks. The man from Vacansoleil now is going to tell us what he thinks of this stage.
It depends on how Omega, if they're still strong, but we're going to try anyway, and hopefully we have a chance today. Yeah, we have Mercato, the specialist, and he lives really close at the final climb, so he definitely going to try, and the whole team will support him.
So Pim Lichtart of Vacansoleil will attempt to do a job for his man Marco Mercato of Vacansoleil, who's got a good turn of speed, and as he said, he knows the area, knows the stage well. Lichtart is third in the Premier Italia Fuga competition, one of the myriad other classifications that's currently been led by Rafael Andreato, who until a few moments ago was also leading the intermediate sprints competition, so at least he has that consolation that he's hanging on to that one at the moment, as we see a little bit of activity on the front, and Mark Cavendish is looking left and right to see if anyone is going to pinch these couple of points off him. Is Cadel Evans going to come up? Will we see any other BMC riders that perhaps will just crowd him out a little bit, and remaining ever vigilant? If you thought Mark Cavendish didn't care about the points competition, well, you're going to get absolute confirmation that he is very interested indeed as they come under the banner, and it's a couple of handy points, I think, on offer for Mark Cavendish. Doesn't look like he's going to be challenged. He's got a couple of Omega Pharma Quick-Step riders keeping him company. And it's Cavendish that takes those 2 points. He moves on now to 111. So he's 8 points ahead of Cadel Evans in the points competition. Points mean prizes. Like I say, he lost it by 1 point last year, and that didn't cost him any energy at all.
No, and talking about the points classification, you know, he is interested in it. When he goes for, you know, that points there, I think it proves that, you know, he wants to get any little advantage, any points to be picked up relatively easy. He's doing it. And when you look at the points classification, the overall winner in the last number of years, you have to go back to 208 Benatti was the last one, and before that 207 Patecchi, but 209 Menshoff, 210 Cadel Evans, 211 Scarponi, and of course 212 Joaquim Rodriguez. It's not the sprinters who have been winning the points classification the last number of years.
Lawrence Watts wants to know if he thinks Cavendish can move from being a pure sprinter to becoming more of an all-rounder like you were.
Well, I don't think he's going to try. He's such a great sprinter. You know, he has the ability to win so many stages, 3, 4, 5 stages in the Tour of Italy, possibly the same in the Tour of France. So why change? I think he's happy with that. The team is very happy when you get that sort of exposure and that many victories in big events. If you try and become an all-rounder, you can lose your sprinting ability a bit. Your fast, your speed, actually, your real fast point loses a bit, and then you know, you miss out that in the sprints. And there's no guarantee as well that you will become a good all-rounder. So I don't think we will ever see Mark Cavendish changing from being one of the greatest sprinters, if not the greatest sprinter of his time.
No, it's tough to give it up when you've got such a hold over the rest of the peloton in terms of level of ability. 4:15 the gap for the 4 riders up front. Lubiano, Kurt Dux, Luke Durbridge and Maxime Belkov doing sterling work. Vincenzo Nibali, a bit of a flapping around from his Maglia Rosa. He won't be too worried about the amount of power loss. He might quite like that little bit of a ventilation in there on that very elegant Paul Smith designed Maglia Rosa. Dimitrios Garas says, any chance the organisers would start the stages earlier so people in the southern hemisphere who have work in a few hours will be able to watch it? Well, yeah, there you go. There is a plan, of course, for a night stage in the Tour de France this year, isn't it?
Yes, the final stage on Champs-Élysées is finished at night time. I think it's not totally finalised, but they're talking about maybe 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. So that's something totally new. Of course, we have seen it in the Tour of Spain, the opening team time trial. That's also at night time. I think they were the first ones to kick off with that. We know the European circuit, European TV, of course, as well. They work to that, finish at a time when it suits the television. And it's a lot of the time with these races, it's the television who also have a big input to what time the stage will actually be finishing for the live commentary on the final 2 or 3 hours of the race.
So the riders need to get the carrots in between now and the Tour de France. It's a nocturne time for them. .4:10 for the riders up front, and they're riding hard in the group behind, so the party is over, and it's been over for quite a while. And all the riders in this race are riding hard at the moment. So Bardiani Valvoli have been very involved in this race so far. Can they get their sprinter into contention today? Marco Canola will tell us now. Well, I know very well the end of the stage. It seems easy, but it isn't easy at all, because there are some points where you need to keep up your concentration. The climb starts more or less 15 kilometers before the finish line, and it won't be easy to do because the streets are very tiny, and I know them well. Because of it, I will try to guide my teammate for the final sprint, or I'll try to do it by myself. I want to do it really well today, says Marco Canola. Sasha Modolo, of course, is the big name sprinter on the Bardiani Valvoli squad. But if Modolo doesn't make it over the hill, Canola fancies his chances as well. Peter Weening has been up the road a lot in the last few days. This is not a day that he'll be looking to... Oh, we see problems for Peter Stetina of Garmin Sharp. So Stetina gets going without any difficulty. He'll be back in the peloton pretty quickly. He's in amongst the cars at the moment. So 4 riders up front still with just under 4 minutes advantage. Join us for the next part after these.